Welcome to I'm going to call this one 5A. I recorded week 5 just 3 days ago, and the goal of this, of course, is supposed to be an exposure for my OCD perfectionism, confronting my perfectionism by doing imperfect videos, and the commitment I made to myself was I was going to do this every week. But this is the second one I'm doing this week. And I'm doing this because I'm trying to process what is happening right now. And I'm kind of astonished by what is happening right now. What's happening is I'm a little bit obsessed with my sleeve being too tight. I've always tended to be very sensitive to clothes and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit of autism. That's another subject. I'm not going to get into that now. Anyway, what's happened just in the last 3 days since I recorded week 5 is, two things, externally and internally. And what's happened with external reality is, if I had to guess, I would guess that things are over. My relationship with Anna, a woman I'm very in love with, a woman I've been with a year and a half, maybe the deepest relationship I've had in my life, certainly the most conscious, deep relationship I've had in my life, and by far the deepest relationship I've had in 20 years. A woman who I think was ready to move in with me months ago. We've talked about having kids. There's sort of been an assumption, not a certainty, but an assumption that we're going to spend our lives together. We've certainly talked about that. And it may not be over. She has requested 2 weeks to process things on her own. But if I'm honest with myself, it's hard for me to see that 2 weeks leading her back to me. The fact that she's taking this step, that she's taking this distance, I believe that will allow her to take more distance. So I'm astonished by this turn of events. Astonished also because things are better than they've ever been. The last time we saw each other, we had 2 weeks together in the Bay Area, was the best I've been, I would say, in terms of my overall, I talked about this on past ones, I won't get into it here, but a lot of shifts that I'd been feeling. And those had manifested in our relationship. Our relationship generally has been easy, always pretty much has been wonderful. But things felt, really, really just wonderful. Though also there were these non-specific doubts, as I shared, that came up our next to last night together. This feeling of not that there's something wrong with her, not even that there's something wrong with the relationship, but this general feeling of, I'm not sure about this for reasons I can't say. And that's something that has cropped up periodically over the course of this relationship. But I did not see this coming, to say the least. But what I'm really astonished by is how I feel. So Anna and I, we spoke last night, the first time in 3 or 4 days. The first time we've ever gone that long, probably without speaking. Maybe not ever, but rare. But she wanted, a few days space. And that conversation led me to this, I don't want to say conclusion, it's not decided, but what I feel is most likely that this relationship is over. And I was in agony last night, tossing and turning, thinking of suicide, not in an active way, I want to add so people don't worry, but as an escape valve, as I can kill myself, but then of course that thought is always followed by, I can't kill myself, I can't do that to my family, and I motion upwards because my parents are on the floor above me right now. I'm at their place in Brookline, Massachusetts, and my nephews and nieces and brother and sister and brother-in-law are below me. Thankfully not right now, they're out of the house, otherwise they'd be screaming and stuff like that. And I can't do that to them, especially the nephews and nieces who I'm so close to. I have a relationship with them that I think, I never had a relationship like that with an uncle or an aunt, and I think most kids don't get that, and I think most uncles or aunts don't get it. But yeah, just the ultimate sort of consolation of, well, I can tap out of this level of reality. I can kill myself. So my mind was going there, but then going like, I can't do that. And then just thinking like, all right, I'm just going to fall apart. Maybe I'll go into a mental hospital, which I've been in before when I was 18, or just collapse, just fall apart, just not do anything. Just the deep anguish. How can I go on without this relationship, without her, without this woman I love, without this just indescribably magical creature? But also, what does it say? Because if I can't make this relationship work, I don't think I can make any relationship work, because she's a very, very easy person to love. It's funny, on our 1-year anniversary, I wrote a song for her. I'm not a singer, but I enjoy singing a cappella, and the song was called Easy to Love. And the chorus was, well, I can sing it. You are so I'm off pitch. You are so easy to love. I'm not so easy to love. The pitch is horrible, and that's been a recurring theme for me, is that she is very easy to love, and I'm not so easy. As she has said many times, I'm equally awful and wonderful. And whenever she feels herself doubting, she feels herself pulled back in. And the awful part is, I guess I'm seeing more and more clearly, it's OCD. It's that simple and that horrifying, because I thought I had so much freedom from it. And I do have more freedom than I've ever had, but I can still be enslaved. And especially the low-level OCD, this addiction to optimizing things, to picking out the perfect hike and the perfect day to have the perfect hike. And the fact that when I haven't optimized properly, I can feel distraught. I'm seeing now, because she shared directly, and not for the first time, that weighs on her. So yeah, the feeling like, if I've lost her, what hope is there? And I, tossing and turning, got out of bed far before my alarm went off, and just this anguish, and what am I going to do? How am I going to get through the next 10 minutes? And I went out on my parents' porch, and the sun was shining, and I took out a notebook where I often will write my prayers. And I started, the prayer was, help me be willing to feel all these feelings. Because I know what the OCD thrives off of, what fuels it, is trying to avoid the feelings, going into my head instead of feeling my body, my heart. So I want to feel these feelings, because the last time I had a heartbreak, like potentially what this one will be, the potential, not that it won't be a heartbreak if it ends, but the potential that it may not end. The last time that happened 20-something years ago, that's when I developed OCD in the aftermath, because I wasn't willing to feel the feelings here. I didn't even know how to feel the feelings here. Psychedelics, among other things, have been instrumental in connecting me to my body, so I have the option to feel the feelings here, but I still habitually make the choice to go into my head with OCD and related behaviors. And when the pain is as intense as it was last night and this morning, the drive to escape into my head is overpowering. And so my prayer, help me be willing to feel these feelings. And then, inexplicably, totally unexpectedly, I felt peace and surrender. And my mind felt quiet. And that's persisted for today. And there's also been a feeling, I'm not sure, it may be a sense of relief. One reason I wanted to record this today, let's try that again. One reason I wanted to record this today is because I'm pretty certain this is not going to last. The pain is going to come back, and it's going to be even more intense. There's this respite. I don't know why I'm getting it right now. But yeah, I felt very calm and peaceful today. And maybe part of that is the OCD that has been plaguing me intermittently for the past 2 weeks is finally over. And this OCD, as I've shared, has been about my big OCD trigger, travel, and where I'm going to be. I was going to be in New York for about a month doing some shows. One of those shows was the Mushroom Cure that I was going to be doing in conjunction with the Horizon Psychedelic Conference. Then I lost my housing in New York. but I could still make it work. And then the conference got canceled, but there was still an opportunity to do other psychedelic shows there. And but I decided to go back to San Francisco to see Anna. But then I was also, yesterday was hellish OCD, just agonizing, going in back and forth. Should I go to New York to do these shows, or should I go to San Francisco earlier? Should I go to New York to do these shows, or should I? And the difference was not a huge difference. It was basically going to San Francisco in a couple of days, or going to San Francisco in a week if I go to New York first. But with OCD, everything seems freighted with this terrible significance. And the significance here, in part, is, as I shared, Anna met a guy who she is, in her words, intrigued by. Not even necessarily attracted to, but intrigued by. Someone her age, someone very wealthy, someone Greek, someone who is exactly who her parents would want her to be with, and someone who I think is obviously, as she said, she's not attracted to him, but she finds his mind very intriguing. And this person is going to be Anna. He spends some time in the Bay Area. He is going to be in the Bay Area in less than a week. So essentially, if I came there earlier, I would have time with her before this guy. And this was part of what the OCD fed off of is, oh God, if I don't see her before, she's more likely to connect with this guy and have be more open to it. Maybe a seed will be planted that would not be planted if she'd seen me more recently and we'd had an amazing time together, because we always have an amazing time together in person, pretty much always. But one of the things she expressed last night is she doesn't want to see me right now because it confuses her. Because as she told me in our previous conversation, where I was saying, so we had this, I'm not going to, you can watch week 5, the first one, but we had a series of conversations last week, very painful conversations. And in one of these, I was like, if I was in San Francisco, I feel like things would be so much easier. We wouldn't be struggling with this stuff. And she said, yes, because when I'm in your presence, the feeling of love I feel is so loud, it drowns everything else out. That's all I can hear. But on this conversation last night, she said, yeah, that's actually why I don't want to see you right now. Because I know if I see you, that love will kind of swallow everything else, swallow all the doubts, swallow all the concerns. She said, it's hard to think clearly when I'm with you. But anyway, but before I had this conversation, I had this conversation with her last night, but before that conversation, just horrible, agonizing OCD, just the insanity, the madness, the realizing. So OCD is considered an anxiety disorder, but I think in some ways it's better classified as a psychosis, at least when you're deep in it, because you're so disconnected from reality. Everything seems so horribly important. The stakes seem so impossibly big. And if you make the slightest wrong move, you're doomed. And I was just so trapped in it, this decision. Should I go to San Francisco in a few days, or should I go next week? A few days or next week? A few days next week? Hours and hours of thinking. And I have enough recovery. I have enough clarity so that I know, hey, you're not going to figure this out by thinking more, but this is where the powerlessness piece comes in. This is one of the great liberations for me, is the realization that I am powerless over the OCD. I don't have to give into it. But at a certain point, when I've thought about something too much, I am powerless to stop further obsessing. So the only way out is to make a decision and just stick with it no matter what. And I know this, and I was telling myself this for hours. Just make the decision, man. The longer you put it off, the more painful it's going to be. And the more likely it is that you're going to fall into OCD in the future, because of course you're wearing in neural pathways. Our brain is a habitual organ in some ways. So just make the decision now. There's never going to be an easier time to make this decision right now, but I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Maybe I couldn't do it. Maybe there was powerlessness at that level. And I talked to someone in this 12-step OCD program, and he said, okay, give yourself 2 hours. If you can't make the decision in 2 hours, flip a coin. And I got off that call and I drove to a little hike near my parents, and I just started sobbing in the car, just sobbing inconsolably. Like I had to pull over, just huge racking sobs. I'm feeling so fucked up, so hopeless, so powerless. So just make the decision now. That's the only way it's going to get better. But I couldn't make the decision. And I felt a little bit of peace after that sobbing. Of course, you usually do. But I was aware the clock is ticking. It's now it's not 2 hours, it's an hour and a half, and it's an hour, and it's 40 minutes. And I'm looking at my phone. Now I'm upstairs watching a movie with my father, one of the few activities we can really connect on with his Alzheimer's. And I'm like, just make it. And I see it, the clock is ticking. Make the decision now. Just make the decision now. And I couldn't make the decision. And I went downstairs to try to find a coin to flip. I was like, fuck it, I'll just flip the coin. But I couldn't do that either. And I was just praying for some sort of relief, but I knew no relief would come till I made this decision, but I couldn't make the decision. And I had dinner with the family, the kids, the nephews and nieces, these magical kids, but I'm just obsessing. My mind is just spinning. And finally, after dinner, I'm like, yeah, I guess I just had enough suffering. I found a coin, a dime, flip it. If I'd planned this better, I could grab the dime. It's right over there. It could be a prop. Flip it. And I tell myself, heads, I'm going to California now. Tails, I'm going to New York first and California next week. And heads, okay, I'm going to California. But of course, this is not, well, it's my decision what to do, but I'd be going to California to see Anna. And to be clear, not just to preempt this other guy, because the more I thought about it, one thing became clear. This other guy is not a cause, it's a symptom of whatever is plaguing her, the doubt she's having. But I want to see her. Of course I want to see her. And so I'm going to go to California, but I realize I should check with her. One, because she's insanely busy, full-time job, full-time school, friends visiting. Maybe she wouldn't have time to see me of course she could make time. Maybe it was a little bit of prolonging the OCD too, like let me just check with her, but I did. I texted her. I'm going to come Tuesday, but if you want more time, let me know. And she called me shortly after. And it didn't start out. The conversation started out with me saying to her, like, this is going to be challenging because, first of all, I have a deep rejection sensitivity. When I wound up in that mental hospital at age 18, I wound up in that mental hospital because my first girlfriend dumped me and I just couldn't handle it. And as discussed, and that was the first time I was in love, though, a pretty immature form of love. The second time I was in love, as mentioned, when that ended, I developed the OCD. And so I knew there was going to be this real rejection sensitivity. And this had come up on my previous calls with Anna last week, where I'd feel myself feeling needy and grasping. So there's that element. And it's this cyclical thing where I feel needy and grasping. I could see that pushing her away. And my mind also will go to worst case scenarios and I'll start articulating them. I'll say like, so basically this is over, even though she hasn't said anything like that. I guess I'm looking for her to reassure me that it's not over. So I gave this disclaimer. I said, this may be hard because I'm in a lot of distress already and she's in a lot of distress, partially because of this, partially because of how much overwhelmed she is. And she started by saying, Adam, this is different because you're giving me these disclaimers. This isn't like your other relationships. But it started going off the rails pretty quickly. And I think because I am more connected to my body, I breathe a lot now and I breathe loudly. There's a lot of sighing when I'm in distress or when I'm experiencing pleasure. I breathe audibly. There was a lot of distress as this call was going on. And she says, I'm going to tell you something. When I used to hear you sigh like that, my heart would go out to you and I'd feel, my heart would open to you. But now I feel irritation. And I said, well, that's just going to make me do it more. And she wasn't sure what she wanted at the beginning. She wasn't clearly saying, don't come. But as the conversation wore on, what she settled on is, she needs 2 weeks. Yeah. I didn't like the way I showed up in the conversation. Again, there was this neediness, this grasping. I was just in deep, deep pain, and I was trying to ameliorate that pain by getting reassurance from her, or I don't know. But I ended it saying what is true, that I do want her to do what's best for her. Because in the days leading up to this most recent call, since our last call, I had been writing, and one thing that had come up to me is like, yeah, there has been this sense, this persistent sense that maybe she would be better off with someone else. Sometimes I look at her and she's extremely beautiful, 17 years younger than me, just a magical creature. And sometimes I'm like the same way her parents don't really want her to be with me, I'm kind of like, come on, you could do better. Like, I hesitate saying this because I used to joke with her about that, and at a certain point she said, hey, that actually kind of pushes me away when you say that. I'm kind of like, maybe I could do better. And, well, in the past, I've shared all of these videos with her before I post them. This one I will not share with her before I post it, but she may watch it once it's posted. Hi, if you're there. Though probably not. I don't know if she would want, if I was in her position, if I'd want to watch this. So the anguish when I got off the phone, just the shock, wow. I mean, we'd been talking about the next year. We've already bought tickets for her to come to Thanksgiving for family vacation, for Thanksgiving with my family. We have a camping trip planned for a couple of weeks to Yosemite. We're talking about her spring break, going to Hawaii, visiting a friend there, and Greece next year. What islands are we going to, all this stuff, this plan, and moving in together. So that's seeming to be pretty close on the horizon. But yeah, what the reason she is feeling this is, I shared before, but she gave a little more detail. But it's the OCD, which is telling, because I don't perceive the OCD as a big issue because I don't perceive it as happening that frequently with her. And I don't think it does happen that frequently. Like, here's how I know I'm doing much, much better, is when I call my sponsor in this 12-step OCD program. He's like, man, you're doing really well. I'm like, how do you know? And he's like, you used to call me twice a week with some crisis. Now you call me like 5 or 6 times a year. And I think that's the ultimate measure. Yeah. But this thing is woven so deeply into my brain and so insidious in these subtle ways. And that affects her. It affects her more than I know. The last relationship I had was this largely pandemic relationship with a woman named Clara. And her too, when it ended, she said the OCD was challenging, and I was shocked. I had perceived me as having basically no OCD, in no small part because we cohabited during the lockdown where there basically were no decisions to make. So I didn't have the typical, should I travel here or here? Should I do this show or that show? I had none of that. But it was there subtly. Maybe not omnipresent, but a lot of the time, clearly. So, and then the other thing is, where I'm at in my life, financially, career-wise. She is a very successful, brilliant person. And I think, but most pragmatically, it's, if we want to have a family, can I support that family? And I dismiss those doubts because I've always been able to make money when I run out of money, when I need money. I can get a day job easily. I can sell. I raised $3 million when I was 24 years old for a startup I did that I didn't even care about. And it was after the dot-com crash where no one was raising money. I am skilled at raising money and selling things. And so I can do that. I don't want to do that, but I can do that if I need to. But also I was supporting myself fairly comfortably as a full-time artist pre-pandemic. I think I can get back there. I think I can exceed it. And this hopefully is part of it. Not that this is going to take off, but by loosening my perfectionism. So the financial stuff, and I basically said as much. I was like, I don't really see that as a big concern. If we want a family and I'm not making enough doing this, then I'll get a day job. But the OCD, I can't dismiss that. And I think that's part of why sometimes I'm like, maybe she could do better. I think that's not part. I think it's the big part of it is this feeling of undeservingness, I think, which I think comes down to the shame that I trace to this origin, to these fights I always got into with my mom, these huge fights where I'd make her cry when I was a little kid, and I felt tremendous shame. I felt bad. Maybe that's part of this feeling of unworthiness. But part of it is just knowing how broken I feel inside. Sometimes, not all the time, not most of the time, but sometimes. Why would I want to inflict that on anyone? Why would anyone want that? But of course, I've shared all this with her. And I think more than anything, that's why she loves me. is because I am so honest and I am willing to be so vulnerable. The relief is so puzzling to me, and I've been thinking about it right before I hit record. I'm like, what is this about? And I think part of it is there was this weird, persistent thought from early on in the relationship. This sounds very odd, but I'm just going to say it, where it feels to me like she's not real. And I never understood it. This started, so we met. We were together in the Bay Area for a month, a year and a half ago, and then she went to Greece for the summer. And when I dropped her off at the airport and we're saying goodbye, she looks at me and says, if my plane crashes, she looks at me and says, if my plane crashes, I want you to know I'm experiencing a lot of complex and novel emotions right now. Which is just such an Anna thing to say. I mean, I love her. But in that moment, I had this thought, if her plane crashes, she was never real in the first place. Because it did feel to me like I had my life, my established life of largely being alone, relationships, sexual relationships, but not really opening my heart for 20 years. And then suddenly this person pops into my life. And an exotic person in some ways, Greek and a perfect person, a Matt, just pops into my life. And it's like maybe that's it. She came out of nowhere and she can disappear again. I don't know what it is. But it's been this persistent thing, and I joke with her. But it's not totally a joke. I'll say, I'm not sure you're real. And what she usually says is, if I wasn't real, wouldn't my breasts be bigger? But I love her breasts. Her breasts are perfect. I love everything about her. I really love everything about her. And this is why these non-specific doubts have been so puzzling, because with women in the past, I've had very specific doubts. Oh, we don't have a good enough conversation. Oh, she's not quite beautiful enough. But with Anna, I don't have any of those doubts. I am perfectly attracted to her. The conversation is scintillating, almost invariably, even after a year and a half. Her sensitivity, her honesty, her integrity. And I may be losing all this now. And yet, again, there is this feeling of relief. So maybe part of it is it's always felt like she's not quite real. I don't know what to say about it. I can't explain it. Maybe it's it's too good to be true, but I don't think it's that. Maybe it's my mind trying to protect me, being like, hey, don't get too attached because she's not real. Like, I don't literally believe she's not real, but it feels that way to me. So maybe part of the relief is like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. And maybe part of these non-specific doubts I've had, these non-specific fears, have been precisely this fear that it will end. That she's not quite real, that this will inevitably end. So don't get too close, find doubts. And if you can't find anything to doubt about this woman because she's too amazing, which I can't find anything to doubt about her, just have a general doubt. So yeah, maybe it's the relief that the thing I've been most afraid unconsciously of happening, and the thing that a part of me feels like I knew would happen, has happened. The Band-Aid has been ripped off. Or maybe it's just, I have these images of these movies. I can't think of a specific example. It's a common scene in a movie, right? A soldier is behind enemy lines, or some special agent. Well, not the main character, because the main character generally doesn't get killed, but some soldier is behind enemy line, and they spotted him, and he's running, and he's running, and he's running, and they start raking him with machine gun fire, and these bullets lodge himself in his body, but he's still running. There's a few seconds where he's been mortally wounded, but he doesn't know it yet. And maybe that's what's happening. I've taken this mortal blow to my heart, but I just haven't quite been able to acknowledge it yet. A denial thing. I'm still running. I'm still acting like everything's not fine. But one thing, though, that gives me some encouragement that this isn't pure denial is my prayer has been answered. Prayers are often answered. Doesn't necessarily mean there's a higher power. It could be a part of myself that I access with prayer. Prayer is a very powerful and ultimately mysterious tool for me. If you ask me who I'm praying to, I have no good answer to that. And frankly, people who do have a good answer, they scare me a little bit. If there is something, we can't fully understand it and know it. Anyway, this prayer has been answered. I have been feeling my feelings. There's been this persistent sense of sadness in my heart, an ache, a literal heartache. And I've been able to be with it. It hasn't dominated, it hasn't overpowered me. But yeah, there hasn't been much thinking and obsessing and trying to figure things out to get rid of it. There has, I will say, been some strategizing. I am going to record a video for Anna. Just kind of saying some of the things I wish I'd said last night in a clearer way. But it'll conclude the same way, that video. So this video, the video I'm going to make for, it's kind of arguing my case in a little bit, not exactly, but which the case is this, that things have gotten much better, even over the year and a half she's known me. I mean, the OCD, when she met me, it was probably 40% of what it was at its worst. And now I'd say it's like 20%. And she's seen that, and she comments on it all the time. There's been a very clear, quite rapid upward trajectory of improvement. So, but I will close that video the same way, which is, yeah, I truly want her to do what is best for her. And when I hear myself say that, a part of me is like, yeah, man, this is not what's best for her. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm grateful for this relief and peace, but yeah, part of it is I'm also present, maybe because of this pain in my heart. I'm just able to be present with it. I don't know why. I didn't expect it. I mean, after my phone call last night, it was all about trying to get rid of the pain, calling people frantically to get some sort of comfort. Yeah. I don't know, a part of me, and I'm hesitating to say this too, because she may watch this, and I don't want to lose her. But a part of me is like, maybe this is for the best. But why? When I think about it ending, I don't imagine finding someone better. I imagine going back to what I was for 20 years, being alone. Maybe having sex with people. Definitely having sex with people. Hopefully having sex with people. That sounded arrogant, but... And maybe more than that, but I mean, like, yeah. If this ended, largely because of the much improved but clearly still deeply problematic OCD, why try with someone else? It's back to not square one, but focus on getting more recovery, more freedom, which I'm feeling is, of course, it's going to be a lifelong journey. And that's what Anna has been saying for really the whole year and a half, maybe not the whole, but the last year, is sometimes she worries that as much as she sees this incredible, that's her word, improvement. She doesn't actually use the word incredible, but like dramatic improvement. Sometimes she thinks that, I still need to be further along for this to work. I really, really love this woman. Yeah, I don't know what it's not quite relief. Maybe it's more surrender. And I'm feeling hesitation putting this video out because I don't want her to watch it because I feel like, of course, I want this to continue. Of course, I want it to continue. Maybe that's part of the relief. Maybe part of it, maybe this is sort of an OCD thing where I'd felt these non-specific doubts and it's like, well, if she makes the decision, it's out of my hands. Or maybe it's just, feeling how scary it is to be in this level of intimacy and vulnerability and honesty with someone. And the prospect of ending that is maybe comforting. I don't know. God, I mean, she's just, well, whatever. I'm not going to keep talking about how amazing she is, but I never expected to find someone who I was able to love so easily with no reservations. But even without any reservations, there was still fear. So, That's where I'm at now. Maybe there'll be a third video this week because I expect probably tonight there will be great, great anguish. Deep, deep pain. But I don't know. I guess all I can do is try to stay present, keep praying, keep writing, trying to get more clarity. The last thing I wrote in my notebook this morning was, if I keep Anna and keep the OCD, I lose. If I lose Anna and lose the OCD, I win. That's what I'm seeing, getting freedom, continued freedom from this. As much as I've gotten, continued freedom is the most important thing. Without that, nothing else really works. My career, my relationships, everything is so compromised. I thought I was doing so well with it, and I am doing well compared to where I was, but yeah. One thing Anna would say to me sometimes, she didn't last night. So her last partnership, someone she was with for 6 years, ended in part because she had, I would say, sort of a mental health crisis, a different type. And this person couldn't handle it. And one thing Anna has said to me periodically is now she understands why this person bailed, and she has more compassion for them, seeing how hard it can be to be with me. And another thing she'll say is, if she said in the past, is if this does end, maybe this is even more motivation to change, because she apparently, I didn't know her before, but had this incredible change as just incredibly, I don't know, she just has her shit together emotionally in a way that is beyond where I am, I would say, in most dimensions. But according to her, so much of this was the result of this last heartbreak. And she said, maybe this is what you need. And when she says that, I tend to get upset. But maybe she's right. And maybe it's not over. Of course, maybe it's not over. I don't know. My prayer is to be present as I find out. To be present with my heart. And not go into obsessing and figuring out and fixing. All right. Well, that's where I'm at right now.